Have you ever been kicked out of a place for no reason, just for who you are? Imagine being treated like an intruder in a place where you should be welcomed, only to find out that the one rejecting you has no idea who you really are. Valentina's story began as an humiliation, but soon turned into a battle no one expected. Who would have thought that a simple judgment error could unleash so much chaos? Are you really going to throw me out of here? Valentina's voice cut through the air, defiant, as she stared at the employee behind the counter. Her face, though calm, showed a dangerous serenity, as if she were weighing each word. Martin, a young man whose gaze couldn't hide his discomfort, let out a nervous laugh, clearly bothered by the situation. "I'm sorry, but we can't accept you," Martin said, barely lifting his eyes from his screen. "This is not a place for someone like you." Valentina, still and with an impassive expression, repeated the question, now with more weight in her words. "Are you really going to throw me out of here?" The young man didn't answer immediately. He knew something wasn't right, but his pride had taken control of the conversation. He couldn't allow someone, with Valentina's appearance, to be accepted into such an exclusive hotel. And in a barely noticeable sigh, he thought that this act deserved no further discussion. Valentina didn't avert her gaze. The tension in the air was thick, like a storm that hadn't fully unleashed. Martin, seeing the woman's unshakable calm, thought his gesture had gone unnoticed. His attitude remained the same, indifference, disdain, as if she weren't even there. "Do you see it?" Martin began to speak in a low but sarcastic tone. "This place is not for people like you. You should know that by now. I'm sorry, but we have rules we can't break." A slight tremor in his voice betrayed the apparent confidence he was trying to display. His hand trembled slightly over the computer keys. Valentina took a deep breath, a gesture only she could notice as the tension in the air became more palpable. She didn't move, her body firm like a statue. "Are you throwing me out?" she asked, each word resonating in the lobby. "Are you sure you know who you're throwing out?" Martin, unable to comprehend the implications of his words, let out a nervous laugh and, without thinking, began to call security. "We don't have time for this kind of guest, and I don't need to explain it any further," he said, almost as if it were a favor. His words were cold, dismissive, filled with a foolish arrogance that clouded his judgment. Valentina didn't say anything more. The silence in the air grew heavier. The people around her watched, but no one dared intervene. The fear of conflict was greater than any sense of justice they might have felt. In the blink of an eye, 2 security guards arrived, looking at Valentina as if she were the intruder, their presence more intimidating than protective. One of them, taller, grabbed her arm, nearly throwing her out. "You can't be here. You need to leave," he said in an authoritative voice. Valentina looked at them without moving, her arms slightly aching from the force with which they had touched her. "Is this how you treat me?" she said in a tone that made the guards hesitate for a moment. But the pressure from their boss and the obligation to follow orders prevailed. The guard pushed her harder. "We're not going to argue. Come on out." Someone in the back tried to intervene, but quickly fell silent when they saw the look on the guards' faces. The fear of being labeled an accomplice was greater than any sense of morality they might have had. When they pushed her to the door, Valentina stumbled but didn't let herself fall. She stood tall, defiant, while her eyes scanned the place. Each step toward the exit felt like a direct blow to her dignity, but she remained standing. The door slammed shut behind her. "Idiots," she whispered to herself as she walked away. And it was at that moment, when she was already on the sidewalk, that the tension reached its peak. Her phone rang. It was the hotel's general manager, who hadn't recognized her number. "Ms. Valentina, we made a mistake. We mistook you for an inappropriate person. We deeply apologize. Is there anything we can do to make it right?" Valentina, with a smile that showed not a trace of mercy, replied, "Make it right? There's nothing to be done. The damage is already done." And before hanging up, she added, "I'll make sure everyone knows what just happened here. Let's see if this hotel remains the same after today." Valentina remained silent after hanging up. She didn't need to think about it anymore. The humiliation, the disdain, The verbal and physical violence she had experienced were not something she could ignore. Not this time. Not just like that. With firm determination, she took out her phone and quickly began drafting a message. Within minutes, her contacts started receiving the news. The hotel owner had been forcibly thrown out by a racist employee. The story spread like wildfire. Meanwhile, inside the hotel, Martin had returned to his position. His face no longer showed arrogance. Now, uncertainty enveloped him. He was waiting for his boss to call, for the management to give him some explanation. But what he didn't know was that it was already too late. A few minutes later, the reception phone rang, and this time the voice on the other side was authoritative and firm. I want all employees involved in this incident to report to the Human Resources Office. This is no longer just a complaint. This is serious. Martin felt a knot in his stomach. Somehow, he knew his future at the hotel was already compromised. Valentina, without making a sound, had given instructions to her lawyer, who within hours issued a formal statement detailing the abuse she had suffered and demanding immediate action. The next day, the story was everywhere in the local media. The hotel, which up until that point had maintained an impeccable facade, watched as its reputation collapsed. The collective outrage was undeniable, not just because of the act of racism, but because of the violence that had been unleashed for no reason at all. On the third day, the hotel's general manager, pale and sweating, requested a meeting with Valentina. The meeting room was cold and silent when they finally entered. Martin wasn't there. He had been immediately suspended, and management was considering firing him. Valentina sat across from the manager, who tried to apologize with a tone that didn't manage to hide his nervousness. I deeply regret what happened, Ms. Valentina. It was an unforgivable mistake. We would like you to reconsider the incident and allow us to move forward. Move forward, Valentina repeated quietly, not taking her eyes off the man. And how do you expect me to do that? To forget it? To forgive a man who tried to throw me out like trash just because of the color of my skin? The manager was left speechless. Silence was the only sound that filled the room. I'm going to sue you, Valentina continued, not raising her voice, but with a certainty that made the air in the room feel thicker. Not for the incident. That's something that can't be fixed. But for what you represent. For allowing this to happen under your roof. The conversation ended quickly. Valentina left the hotel without looking back. She knew what needed to be done, and she wasn't afraid of the weight of the battle she was about to fight. The image of the young employee, with his disdain and exposed racism, remained etched in her mind, but she knew she wouldn't let him win. The hotel would never be the same, and neither would she.